I was interested in your experience from the. I think there was a Sydney Morning Herald article that talked about you and your father's work, and it was in relation to the exposure therapy techniques, and it sounded like you, as part of that technique, you watch films of body farms and things like that. That you watch bodies that are going through different stages after death of rigor mortis, of marbling of flesh, of and probably moving into something like putrescence. So I wonder, you exposed yourself to that. Not many people would choose to do that as a young person.
Yeah, I guess not. And when we showed those videos in workshops, that was an optional task for people to watch. That was during afternoon tea. So people could go and treat themselves to a tea or coffee if they'd rather do that than watch decaying corpses.
Yes.
I think, again, I just personally, I've always thought, you know, if we know something like that is going to happen, that I don't know what benefit it has to completely pretend that it's otherwise. And I think it's, you know, it's very related to the Buddhist tradition as well, of trying to remind ourselves that this is a mortal body that we're in and that this isn't going to last forever. But it's, you know, it's certainly not for everyone. And that sort of task, you know, would be a very, very high level exposure task. It's not something you would be recommending for everyone, because it is quite a, you know, it's quite a graphic thing to watch.
What was your experience? I mean, it's obviously changed over time because that's the point of exposure therapy. But what was your first experience of, you know, sort of being confronted with that? Do you remember?
I think I do. Yeah, I remember when I found the video. I think there was almost sort of like a what's the word? Almost like a dissociation where you're kind of. And I think probably most people would have this watching it, where you sort of rationally know that what you're seeing is a human, but it looks so unhuman and it looks so alien that it's actually quite hard to kind of really grasp that this was an actual person that was alive once. So it's definitely kind of graphic to watch and you know, made me feel a bit queasy. But I still found myself struggling to really kind of grasp what was going on, I think, in the video. So I think even with myself, there was still that kind of separation with what I was seeing and what I was actually understanding it to be, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, empathy is a double-edged sword. And has that changed over time? Do you have a different relationship with it now?
With that like those videos in general, or death in general?
Yeah, that experience of seeing those things.
I guess I've kind of habituated to it more. But I think it's still hard to kind of shake that queasiness of actually seeing what happens to a body. So I think I'm more comfortable with it now, I'd say. But I still find it really hard when you see a body like that. I still find it really hard to really understand that that's what it is. I think probably similar to most people's views on death, where you kind of think death happens to other people, but not to me. Like, this is something Tolstoy wrote a lot about, you know, that death, I get that death happens and I get it happens to others, but it's really hard to really emotionally believe and understand that happens to me as well. And so I think I have a similar thing of I'm really kind of having to constantly remind myself that no, this is real, and this was a person that was lying here, and now they're just, you know, they're just bones and so on.
Deep Trouble is produced by Steve Charman in the studios of Main FM, Castlemaine.
The Deep Trouble podcast is presented by Trouble Magazine at troublemag.com. Thanks for listening.